Welcome to another episode of Dime Time. This time we're talking about the matchup between the LA Clippers and the Utah Jazz, the 4 and 5 seed in the West. Now this is a playoff matchup that has a potential for an upset. But let's get to what the teams have done during the season. Now the Los Angeles Clippers, now they're called the LA Clippers. The LA Clippers have been fairly predictable over the last few seasons, bang out a 50 plus win season and then get knocked out of the playoffs. So coming off a disappointing playoff upset last season where the Clippers lost both Chris Paul and Blake Griffin in a single series, the Clippers were expected to make bigger moves this season. They did have a busy offseason, but it wasn't too spectacular. They re-signed Austin Rivers, they re-signed Jamal Crawford, they re-signed Luke Mahmoute. They also added some depth by bringing in Raymond Felton and Maurice Spates. But so you see, it was a busy offseason, but wasn't spectacular. Statistically, their core of Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan are all doing roughly the same thing that they did last season. They've gotten better in certain aspects, but generally the same amount of impact. They did pepper their schedule with a bunch of win streaks here and there, but nothing to create a great impact. Nothing that tells you, hey, listen, guess what? The LA Clippers are in town. Fortunately for them, just 8 of their last 20 games were on the road, so they are coming into this playoffs fairly fresh. And the real problem for the Clippers, though, is Chris Paul has maybe 3 more seasons to win that championship. Blake Griffin is still young, DeAndre Jordan is still young. But the Clippers need to make some serious decisions this offseason. No matter what the outcome of this playoffs happens, the Clippers have a ton of stuff to fix. Both Griffin and Redick are free agents at the offseason. So what do the Clippers do? Do they flip Redick and Griffin to add more pieces so that they can capitalize on the last few great seasons of Chris Paul? Or do they keep Griffin? Do they keep Redick? Do they keep their core intact? In my opinion, I think they keep the core intact. Why? Because Griffin is a true franchise player. No matter what you flip Griffin for, you're not going to get a player of his caliber. The closest that you can flip Griffin for is DeMarcus Cousins, who is a free agent 2 seasons later. And guess what? During that same season that DeMarcus Cousins is a free agent, even Chris Paul is a free agent. So you see when I say the Clippers are in fix, what I'm talking about. Coming to the Utah Jazz, the last time they finished with 50 wins in a season, Jerry Sloan was still a coach and Deron Williams was fighting for the mantle of best point guard against, guess who? Chris Paul. And how quickly things change. The Jazz still don't have a superstar. Gordon Hayward has kind of stepped into that role. He's put up all-star numbers, was rewarded by putting up those all-star numbers by getting a roster on the annual event. He's averaging a career high in points and shooting from the field. But what's really the biggest improvement for Gordon Hayward is the fact that he looks confident as a leader for the Jazz. The Jazz have not had a leader since Deron Williams and Boozer left. And Gordon Hayward looks comfortable with that position right now. He's stepping up in games. He's confidently bringing up the ball during clutch situations. This is something the Jazz sorely lacked. Another bright spot for the Jazz was the emergence of Rudy Gobert, who is on the brink of possibly winning Defensive Player of the Year. You can convince a bunch of people to vote for him for Defensive Player of the Year. He's brought back that old school threatening menace that looms in the paint where guards and centers and forwards all alike have to think twice before putting up a shot when they are in the paint. For a long time this season, the Jazz had the best defense in the league. Of course, eventually the Spurs and the Warriors caught up. Finishing third in defensive efficiency behind the Spurs and Warriors is nothing to be ashamed of. Like the Clippers, this playoffs will also weigh heavy for the Utah Jazz and what's going to come next offseason. Gordon Hayward has made it very clear he's soon going to be on the wrong side of 30. He needs to compete on the championship team. The Jazz do look like they are in a position to be able to put a contender, but I don't think they are yet in a space where they can contend for one of the higher seeds. That's where Gordon Hayward wants to be. And with the season that he's put up, believe me, there are a ton of teams that are willing to throw money at Gordon Hayward to join them. So unless the Jazz are going to go deep in the playoffs, expect Gordon Hayward to make a move and join a true playoff and championship contender. Coming to the head-to-head matchups, the Clippers dominated the regular season. They won the series 3-1. But nothing about those games, nothing about these 4 games actually told you where this particular playoff series will go. Which is why I feel if there's a potential for upset, or a potential for confusion, this is the playoff series. Nothing tells you for sure that the Jazz will win this. Nothing tells you for sure that the Clippers will win this. The only thing we can go by is speculation, which is the Clippers are a far stronger playoff tested team. As recently as 2015, they took the Spurs to 7 games in an epic 7 game. They took the Spurs to 7 games in an epic playoff battle, one of the greatest playoff battles we will ever see. For the Jazz, George Hill brings some playoff experience, Derek Favors brings some playoff experience, but in a whole, this is going to be a team that is going to be fresh to the playoffs. Now that can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? The good thing is that they're going to go all out. They have nothing to lose in taking the fight to the Clippers. But the bad thing is the Clippers, especially Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, know exactly what it takes to win a playoff series. The Jazz certainly have the capability of winning a couple of games, especially if they turn up their defense and the big three of the Clippers don't get going. The Jazz have a chance to upset them in a couple of games. But at the end of the day, I feel the Clippers' playoff experience is going to be a huge determining factor in this series. So, in my opinion, Clippers was in 6. Thanks for watching. If you've got something better to say, leave it in the comments and definitely check out the other playoff previews on my channel.